Well, I actually started 100 years ago with my grandfather, Henry, who bought a tile plant in Hancock, not out where it is now, but downtown. And they started making just drain tile and block. They did the shorter field tile. Initially there was even wet cast. They'd make a piece, in a form and take it out the next day, and then eventually got into where they could use what they call dry cast. They'd make multiple pieces out of the form, and eventually started in with the reinforced pipe.
At the time, you would go to the site, and whatever structure you needed, you would have to create the forms on site, batch the concrete, and then basically form on site. Now, that took a lot of time. Everything just kind of was put on hold. And all of a sudden we figured out how we can do this drainage tile. And we can, pretty much stamp out these 4-foot pieces and address drainage issues for farmers and cities. So all of a sudden there's this innovation that happens. Old material, but new shape and new way to manufacture it.
My grandfather started it, but it did involve, he had 10 children. 7 boys, 3 girls, so he had to keep all 7 boys busy. He built himself a concrete house, and in the basement is where they would go in and bring the rock and sand and cement and forms, and they'd actually be making concrete blocks down there in the wintertime.
They're all such innovative people. It appears to me that they had a habit of hard work and be looking for ways to do it better. One of the interesting things in the early ages, we put in some big pipe down on a project, and Henry actually went down to Rochester to get some chemo treatments, and he rushed back and he was out on the job to see that we were getting that pipe installed correctly. So it was very interesting to know him, that he never let any grass grow under his feet.
The town has basically grown up around the plant, and basically that town has never known what it's like to be without Hancock Concrete and vice versa. Gene, my grandpa, was the mayor of Hancock for years. He definitely had a love for people. In fact, I still have to this day, people will come up to me and will say something that my grandpa did for them. I think Rob's dad, Richard, has the same kind of story. So Richard and Gene were very focused on the local community, and Hancock only has 740 people. So it's really important that a manufacturing facility that employs over 100 people, that's a pretty big part of the community.
Henry, our grandpa, he had cancer the last couple of years, so he knew, something was going to have to change over. So my father, Richard, he was kind of the one that ended up taking over, and then eventually Gene got involved.
Grandpa Gene was kind of the hands-on innovator. Richard, his brother, was very much like the sales, marketing, business strategy, big picture guy.
So between the two, they were a real team. It was a real kickoff from when Henry was there building the foundation for the company, and then those guys coming into play. And between the two, Richard and Gene, some had the idea, somebody knew how to make the idea work.
The business kind of did not have that growth that much up until when we got into the 50s, when we started working with the arch pipe, the big arch pipe. They called it either the Hancock arch or the Schmidgall arch. My dad had made that comment that, you want to do something that no one else can do, and it had the bumper sticker. I was back in the 60s when Hancock was the home of the world's largest concrete arch pipe.
One of my favorite stories is Richard Schmidgall, when he was president of the company at that time. They were trying to move one of their big arch products into the state of Iowa. And so I actually pushed the product and got them to spec it on a letting, took the job without owning the equipment, and then I got a hold of Richard and I said, okay, Richard, I've got a job here. And I said, you have to lend us the equipment to build this with and help us out a little bit. And he says, we can't, we're just too busy. And I said, I just can't accept that as an excuse. Richard, being the way he was, he realized the potential down the road, and so he scrambled to make that work and to make that project work. That's really where the big arch concept, which turned into the precast box concept, started basically in the state of Iowa.
What it did was give them more area, and it was something they could work with, but that was before the precast box culverts came into the market, and have basically kind of taken over most of that.
But Joe Kelly went around the state of Minnesota and sold them on box culverts. We pretty much created that market. And that market is, we can replace rural bridges with box culverts. And instead of waiting 2 months for a road to be down, it's 2 weeks, because the structure arrives on site and literally the contractor can install it and get out.
I believe it was 1976. We have more sizes available to make. We got skewed aprons, which we didn't have in the arch pipe. We can put the pipe closer together.
My edict from Gene Schmidgall and Richard Schmidgall at that time was to go to the state of Iowa and get a precast concrete box culvert spec and get that as a standard in Iowa. There's 99 counties in Iowa, and I dare say now that all 99 counties have at least one precast box in them.
Project engineers on the job, they would look at some of this and would be amazed of how the pipe would go together, quality of pipe, how we handled them, how we could unload them, and different things like this without banging them up and chipping pipe. We were just a peanut compared to these other companies that were out there, but we were kind of setting the standards for the concrete pipe industry. That's more or less what was happening. But
probably by the 1980s, things started to slow down. We started to get a little complacent. And so by the time I got involved in 2007, leading up to 2009, things got really, really tight. And that's where we started getting some help from some folks in the area. And we're able to take advantage of what ended up being an incredible year in 2011.
It was like everything in the country in 2008, 2009, 2010, everybody was just scrambling to survive. You know, we did as much as we could, we felt like in Lakeview and Sibley. You know, we moved into under the Hancock umbrella, which helped us more. But we were still deficient in some things, and that's when moving into the Superior end of things was it's just such a natural. It's under the umbrella of, you know, just really good, classy people and management, and the kind of people you want to be affiliated with.
And so we really spent from 2011 on of really transitioning to an environment that's more innovation of product, innovation of how we produce, but most importantly, it's also about improving the individual.
Hancock Concrete started in Hancock, and the first additional facility got involved was in Cannon Falls in about 1976. Started there with production. It was just outside production, and that's obviously still going today with additional expansion since then. The next one would have been in New Ulm, Minnesota. We had that, and then in 2000 we built a building in Cortland, which is just 7 miles down the road. It was in an old gravel pit, so that facility is still running there. The next ones would have been Sibley, Iowa and Lakeview, Iowa, and so there's more pipe and manholes in both of those plants. That was the mid-90s. The next involvement was there was a yard up in Moorhead that we just started stocking our standard products. And we also bought a plant out in Devil's Lake, which we started back in doing some wet cast there, and now since then they did an expansion and now they have a pipe machine out there. The other one was the Sioux Falls plant. That's basically the plants that we work out of.
Hancock has got a phenomenal reputation in just the way that they conduct their business, their integrity. The people that you see at Hancock, you see year in and year out. So there's just an awful lot of exciting things coming down the road, especially for the precast business. And I just think the sky is the limit for Hancock. You know, the only thing that I hate is that I'm going to be 70 years old in a year, and I'm not the future.
Here's a product that you can drive your semi over the top of with a little bit of dirt on it, and it's going to stand there. And these other guys, I mean, what's going to hold it up? It's just the dirt around it, you know. Concrete pipe's out there, and it's still the best product that's made.
Well, it gives you pretty good satisfaction to know that it's still around. I mean, I think our biggest step and advantage we did was when we got acquired to be a part of Superior. That's kind of an offshoot of Henry as well. So
Any company that makes it to its 100-year anniversary needs to celebrate. So I looked up the US Census information from 2006. And of the 6,022,000 companies that were a part of the census, less than 562 were over 100 years, which means that if you make it to your centennial, it's about a 0.0089%. And it's certainly not because of something that even those of us today have done. It's literally generations of people that have had this mindset that my work is important, I want to leave a great legacy. And here we are today trying to continue to fulfill that same commitment.